and the system. We make these demands on behalf of our young people, on behalf of Daunte Wright, a life that was taken too soon, and on behalf of Daunte Wright Jr. Thank you. Like a tree. M-A-T-T, B-R-A-N-C-H.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure that people are spelling their names when it come out to the microphone. I apologize. That was really powerful, Matt, and you definitely spoke from the heart. Next, we have a community member here, Pratia Tolles, who will be speaking to us today.
Hello. My name is Protea Tolles. I'm a resident of Brooklyn Center, and I'm a mother of 2 beautiful black children. Since the murder of Daunte Wright, the community has come together to love and support one another. The people of Brooklyn Center have set up donation sites and have done an amazing job getting resources to the people who need them, because that is who we are, and we deserve to feel safe and protected within our community. Unfortunately, many people in our community haven't felt safe for a long time, and many more don't feel safe right now. And we need our local government to be restructured in a way that restores the sense of safety in our community. It's been a long-standing concern that the city manager position is someone that is not required to live in our city, is unelected, and therefore not accountable to the residents, yet sets and implements the city agenda which affects our day-to-day lives. The city manager position is oversight for the police department, which leaves out oversight by our elected officials and our citizens. I want to see real change in our government, and the change I would like is for the manager position to be full-time, to include a staff person for the mayor. The city council should also be full-time. This current situation has highlighted the need for this. Making these changes to our local government will help to better reflect and magnify the voices of the citizens. Our elected officials need the resources to be able to implement the changes we need on a full-time basis. This will allow them to dedicate their time and attention to our city and the needs that we have as we work on a path forward from this tragedy. I want all members of our community to feel safe in our city. Brooklyn Center is made up of a diverse and multicultural people, and we should all feel like we have a place here and like we belong here. Our differences bring value to our city and should not be something that divide us, but rather bring us together. This tragedy should not have occurred. Our community does not have room for the lack of human life, and Daunte Wright should still be alive today. As a mother, I always fear that one of my children are victims of some type of tragedy, and my heart just drops. Years ago, when my brother was shot by Derek Chauvin, I received a call, and immediately I thought he was dead. I thought my brother was dead, and I had to allow that to register before I realized that he was alive. Now, although he didn't lose his life, his body, his physical body was harmed. His mental was harmed. And the shooting caused irreparable damage to our family and to our relationship, and to him mostly. We need our police to be held accountable, and we need them to act in a way that is appropriate to the citizens, to be able to protect us and to serve us, and to not be protected by the system that was set up against us. Thank you. Protea Tolles.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Protea. Amazing.
Our next citizen speaker is Stephen Cooper.
Thank you. Good morning. Stephen is S-T-E-P-H-E-N and Cooper is C-O-O-P-E-R. And here we are again. How many times in your lifetime have we had to mourn a tragedy like this? How many times have we had to gather together under these kinds of circumstances because of fundamental failures? And those fundamental failures is that we do not fulfill our founding creed. And our founding creed is all people are of equal value and all people are of equal importance. And when the police and other governmental entities interact with people, they do not do that. They change the way they look at them on a variety of ways. Now, it's not just in these very public things that are happening right now that this happens. We've got to remember it happens every day, everywhere in America, in all kinds of different things, from selections for jobs, for opportunities to work, for everything that happens. The race of a person or other factors that have nothing to do with it determine what happens. We've got to correct that. Now, Brooklyn Center has created a rich and diverse population, which is a successful example for the entire state and perhaps the entire country. There are very few cities that the people get along as well as this, from so many different cultures, and the city works for the people. But there's so much we have to do to make that work in other ways. We have the opportunity to address some of these problems right now. We're going to have a new city manager, and we're going to have a new police chief, and we have other ordinances that are being considered. The only way that that will be a good thing is if the citizens of Brooklyn Center are involved deeply in those choices. That cannot be done in a vacuum. That cannot be done without interfacing with all of our communities and giving them the opportunity to say what they think about those kinds of things. We also have a number of other things that are important. It is important to remember the people who live here know this city so much better than the people who work here if they don't also live here. Far too many of the people who work here for the city do not live here. And I think that includes virtually every single police officer.
That's right. Yes.
Now, one of the things that we really need is we have to give transparency that allows the citizens of Brooklyn Center to participate in these decisions, because their decisions will be so much better and so much more long-lasting.
That's right.
Now, one of the things we also have to do is to realize the importance of fairness and equality is more important than whatever the issue on the table right now is. And almost always when issues come on the table for decision makers, equal opportunity, fairness, making sure there's equality falls backwards. It becomes a slogan, not a reality. And so you don't have the fact that when these decisions are made, the first priority, number one, is it fair to all of our folks? And is it equal for all of our folks? So often, that is not even on the table. And that's an important change. Now, when we talk specifically about changes, sometimes people think changes don't matter. They do. Think of even some small changes that have happened recently. Body cams. If it wasn't for body cams, most of these cases, that, including the one that's in trial right now, would have been passed off with explanations and rationalizations, and we would never have known what really happened. Body cams are a small thing, but a big impact. And let's go a step further. The City of Brooklyn Center on its website should publish the arrest by race. Are we arresting 3 blacks for every white? Are we making traffic stops? That data should be there, and if it's out of whack, there should be an accounting. And that accounting would let us look at, whoa, how come? How come? And at bare minimum, the officers in the police department would have to give an explanation. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying they can't do it with no transparency. And that's just, use of force training has to be fundamentally changed. I don't know how many of you have ever gone to use of force training. I've been through it. I've seen how use of force training works, and it is totally out of whack. It's 100% prioritizing the feeling of safety for the officer and 0% prioritizing the feeling of safety for the person who's stopped. That's wrong. That's got to change, and that cannot continue. There are so many great suggestions that have come from this community and also ones that have come from other communities how to correct these problems. But it takes the commitment to do it. One of the things I fear is after an emotional response like we're having to them, and it's not just one, it's not just two, to the multiple murders, and all of us can think back over the last 5 years, how many have there been? There's this big emotional outpouring. But afterwards, we put everything back on the shelf. And if we don't continue to do the hard work to make the changes, we're all going to be meeting in a meeting like this again. We really have to implement and enforce. And let me tell you, one of the biggest disappointments I've seen in my lifetime is there's so many good plans that are put together that would succeed that are never implemented. And they're just ignored. And they just sit there. And when you call them on it, oh, well, you know, we had something else that was more important. I don't want to have to meet with you all again. I hope we implement those rules, and I hope everybody here is willing to do the hard work that it'll take to do that. That will not, to change people's behavior is one of the hardest things in the world. Think of somebody quitting smoking. They know they should. How easy is it to do? Changing these things requires all of us to work hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Steve. And this is the exact reason why myself and my husband moved here. My husband is currently serving in Kuwait right now, and I am home heavily pregnant. But a community like this is the reason why we choose Brooklyn Center. And we want to make sure that we can live here and raise our child without being afraid and without knowing that someday either my husband, myself, or my child could be killed, like Daunte was killed on these streets. And today I want to introduce another resident who lives across the street from the police station, Jemiah Creighton.
Hello, thank you guys. Good morning. My name is Jemiah Creighton. I have been living across the street from the Brooklyn Center police station for about 2 years now, with whom I live with my 11-year-old sisters and my 3-year-old child. Since the murder of Daunte Wright, I have watched my community do great things. I have watched them support their family and just come together and stand for his justice and stand for Black lives, you know, and people that look like me. But I will not shy away from what we endure every other night. Me and my kids and people in my building, we feel very unsafe. From the tear gas that goes on, from watching the excessive crowd control from our fellow officers in our communities, and it's just out of control. I wish that things could be better. For example, my kids have autism, and it was so bad one day in the front of our patio, I had to go out there as they were shooting the tear gas and ask them, can you guys please refrain from using the tear gas to crowd control? I was told to go in my house and shut the door and shut my windows, as if my doors and windows aren't already shut. We're affected from the gas, we're affected from the noise. My kids were crying historically. They do not know any better, they're autistic. We live in fear. Every day, my kids think the police are the worst people in the world, which they shouldn't feel like that. We live across the street from the police station. We should feel safe all the time. But I feel like this can change. This narrative can change. Governor Watts and others can change this narrative. That $30 million that is used for Operation Safety Net should be used for, how about retraining of these police, retraining for better, peaceful crowd control. Better, peaceful. Let's get to know their communities they work for, because they don't live here.
That's right.
We do.
That's right.
Not one of the police officers live in Brooklyn Center.
This is out of control. We feel unsafe in our building. My kids don't want to be home. We have to do better.
Yep.
But I feel like our community can do better.
Yes, we can.
For our future, for my kids' future, we have to do better. Thank you guys for listening to me.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is spelled J Amaya, Jemiah Creighton, Crayton. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And just if I can throw in one positive thing, you may know that our the school district and many of our churches are providing supplies and food and alternate shelter for the people living in the community. And so it doesn't take the place, it doesn't solve the problem of the citizens, but it's just one really positive thing that Brooklyn Center has come together to do. So the next speaker is our mayor, Mike Elliott.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Mike Elliott, Mike So I'm the mayor of Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Very happy to be here this morning with community, and I couldn't be more proud of people who are gathered here, and I'm just here to support their voices and to lift their voices up, because quite honestly, they have mobilized in the midst of this tragedy and have really responded in ways that has kept our community together. They have provided food, sustenance. They provided basic necessities to their fellow community members. They have held hands together and have helped all of us grieve together. I want to just say a quick word about Daunte and his family, because they are the center of what's happened in our community. I've gotten some time to spend with Daunte and his family, and every time I'm in touch with them, I'm just reminded of how much love exists in that family, even in the midst of this tragedy. So Daunte's life mattered. And what community here is saying is that his life is going to continue to matter, because Daunte is such an important part of our community, and we're going to do all that we possibly can, all that is within our power, to make sure that we are implementing the kind of changes that would see that another Daunte life isn't lost.
Thank you.
I agree with just about everything that's been said here today. As we go forward, we need transformative change. We need accountability. We need transparency. I heard Stephen Cooper talk about making sure data is available in terms of arrest, who's being pulled over, who's being stopped, who's being arrested. We need transparency, because if we don't have transparency and we don't measure what we're doing, we don't know if we're doing better or not. So that's incredibly important. Jemiah spoke earlier, and in many ways, she and others who live next to the Brooklyn Center Police Department have been impacted by this tragedy more than perhaps obviously the only people that have been impacted more are Daunte's family. And they have really suffered through this tragedy. They have had to live through a lot of noise through the night. They've had to live through having rubber bullets hit their windows. They've had to live through the tear gas seeping in through their windows at night when they've been sleeping, which is why we've always taken the stance, myself and the Brooklyn Center City Council, that we don't believe that tear gas and rubber bullets are appropriate means of dealing with protests and dealing with crowds. Eventually, I think that voice has prevailed, and we have stopped using those measures to respond to protests. And so the last several nights have been rather peaceful. People have gathered, and they continue to gather. And in some cases, law enforcement has not even enforced the curfew and has continued to allow people to protest peacefully. I want to say that this is such a fundamental right in our country. I'm reminded about the march in Selma. And if you all will recall, those people were given dispersal orders by law enforcement, much like we see here in Brooklyn Center. And they were given a certain amount of time to disperse. And they did not disperse. They chose civil disobedience. You remember something called the Boston Tea Party, right? Protest against the government and delivering your grievances is such a fundamental part of what makes our democracy work, that we just have to make sure that we continue to allow those voices to be heard. This is critical as we're moving forward. So I'm not going to take any more time. I just want to thank the community for all the work that you're doing in mobilizing, in helping to keep our community together, in helping us respond in the midst of this tragedy. So thank you all very much.
So I want to say thanks to our mayor for being here today to address us. I also want to send out a shout out to our city council members who are actually standing behind us in support today. And hopefully we can all move forward as a community to make sure that what happened to Daunte Wright do not happen to any one of us, do not happen to my child, do not happen to my husband. So thank you. And next, we would like to invite our congresswoman who also happens to be a very good friend of mine, Ilhan Omar, to speak. Thank you.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Well, good morning, everyone. I wanted to pause because those are really raw feelings of how many people in this community feel. And in this state and in this country feel. And so I am excited and really honored to be here in solidarity with my constituents, community leaders who have gathered here to make sure that in the midst of the commotion, that their voices are being uplifted and being centered as residents of Brooklyn Center. We are here at the site of where Daunte Wright was murdered in the hands of police, what I call state-sanctioned violence. We all know that there is a trial taking place at the neighboring city in my district in Minneapolis. And our communities are tired and exhausted, really, at this repeated offense and assault that continues to happen, where we continue to find ourselves in a state of mourning, in a state of exhaustion, in a state of trauma, and constantly seeing so much pain unearthed every single day, not just with the visual reminders of the lives that have been taken too soon by those who were sworn to protect, but also the actual witnessing that takes place, because this violence isn't taking place in some remote space. It's taking place in the midst of community where people are bearing witness every single time this violence is perpetrated within our communities. I have had the honor of representing Brooklyn Center in Congress for the last 2 years. And I know, as somebody who grew up in the neighboring city in Minneapolis, that Brooklyn Center really has been for all of us an example of how diversity thrives. This is a city where a beautiful fabric, mosaic of beautiful people from all over the world have gathered and created a community where they can all rely on one another and live peacefully together and work in supporting each other as they create a space of stability and survival for so many people who have come here as refugees as well into our state and into this city. And we have seen that example play out in the last week and a half, where people have gathered to collect resources to distribute to community members, where so many of us have called into the residents of the buildings that are by the police precinct doing wellness check-ins, where you are seeing today community members share stories of how they have collectively bonded in the midst of this tragedy, and how their resilience is going to get them through these challenging times. I know that we've been asking for accountability, we've been asking for transparency, we've been asking for transformational change. And I know, to me, that Black Lives Matter is not a hashtag and should never just be a hashtag. When we think about the police state, the police system, and we think about all of the systems of injustice that exist in this country, they are systems that have been created by men, and they are codified in law. And so all of the pain and the hurt and the trauma, not just experiencing by this community, by Minneapolis, by our state, by this nation, are pains and traumas that we can try to create relief for by implementing policies that move us forward. And so our community here in Brooklyn Center, and my district and our state and our country, is asking for us to take a leap of faith to say the current policing system that we have is not doing anything to protect and serve. And so what will it take for us to have a system where we are all protected by? And what does it take for us to have the resources in our communities that would essentially provide the safety that we all need? I am constantly appalled by the fact that it is easy. It is easy for municipalities, for the state, for the federal government to readily come up with resources to police and brutalize people. But when it comes to coming up with resources to provide health care, to provide mental health services, to provide housing, to provide the things that we need for our well-being as a community so that we can thrive, they are put in the back burner. And people oftentimes will say, this is not the time. We don't have the resources. We're not sure how we're going to pay for it. We can't get people on the other side of the aisle to agree. And they are willing to do their press releases, to have their press conferences, to talk about how Black Lives Matter, to talk about racial justice, to talk about equality, without actually lifting a finger in creating proposals that actually speak to those words. And so we have a slew of legislation that we've introduced on a federal level, some bills that we've actually passed in the House that are currently sitting in the Senate that move this country forward. And I am tired about people talking about the filibuster. I'm tired about people talking about the narrow margins we have in the Senate. It is time for people to go beyond the press releases, to go beyond the press conferences, and to actually do the right thing in moving our country towards progress. So I am thankful to all of you. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you for giving me the honor to represent you. And I know that in this dark moment, we will walk together towards the light. And transformation will happen, and we will not rest until we get this country to be the one that we all aspire it to be. So thank you all.
I certainly can't follow that, but we have one more community speaker to finish us up today, John Solomon.
Good morning. My name is John, that's John, and last name is Solomon, which is spelled Solomon. I come to you as a 26-year resident of Brooklyn Center here, and I'm very proud of that here. It's a great community. I know we're in the national spotlight, actually the world spotlight right now, and within that, I want you to know that we're coming together as a community to show you the best of Brooklyn Center and not just what might be highlighted in the looting and things like that here. We got great people here. We got great families. And if you look around right now, you'll see shining examples of how we come together. We got 2 buildings, resource centers, making sure that we got people fed, the needs that they have, that while some of the stores are closed down are being taken care of. We got churches coming together that are housing people. They're providing safe havens. They're providing food for not only just the residents, but they're providing food for the law enforcement as well here as a olive branch to reach out and say, we're all here together, and even though you have a job, understand that this community tries to take care of everybody here. Now, not only as a parent do I come together here, but I come together out here as a community activist and as a school board director here. And I say that because that's one of the most important things to me, is that my job is making sure that our children have access to the best education they possibly can get here, and that we improve it, that we make sure the finances get to them, and but that also that they learn about themselves and about who they are in this country here, the history and everything they need to know to come back out here and contribute to not only Brooklyn Center being a greater place, but this whole country being greater here. Police violence. I have a real problem with that, and I have for a long time, because number one, as a black man, it's automatically assumed that we don't like the police here. And that's a total myth. We, like everyone else in this country, want to have safe communities. We don't want crime around here, but we do want to be treated fair and just. And that's the biggest thing here. I believe in police work. I was actually a police officer for 5 years in the city of Washington, D.C. here. I have a very respected record there. And I did a lot of responsible things in a city that was 69% black, that needed police to be responsive to the community's needs. And we did that. But just like any other black man, I've been pulled over. In fact, I've been what you call profiled and have pretext stops 18 times here during my time here in Minnesota. Most of it in the course of my job as a social worker here. And I testified in the year 2000 at the Capitol on Senator Ranum's racial profiling bill. Back then we were talking about trying to do something effective on this profiling, that it was a real issue here. I think I was talking to Stone at that particular time there, because I can see, looking across the room, a lot of these senators are basically reading papers and doing everything to ignore it. And in turn, we didn't get much out of it here. Now, after that, I live every day with the simple fact that because we couldn't get across to these people, we lose people like Philando Castile, we lose people like Daunte Wright, young people who haunt me at night, because I say if they would have listened to me at that particular time, maybe those young people would still be here. So it's a problem. And it's a problem when you have 49 officers that don't even live in the community and they don't care about the community here. But they come here every day with a Call of Duty type mentality that it's like the gun is the first option here to deal with something. I've heard different officers at different places, overheard them say things like, we have to keep these animals in the cage here, you know, or as I heard a couple of them say, I come into Minneapolis every night, and every time I drive in, I feel like I'm coming to Africa. What kind of mentality is that for people? History. We go back from the time 156 years ago to when we had those 4 million ex-slaves walk off the plantations out in this world, and those little bit under 1 million free slaves that were already out here. And what did they ask for? Nothing but get out of the way, respect us, give me equity, give me justice, and allow me to be part of the progress of this country. We fought for that for 156 years now, to be part of the equity, the inclusion, and to be able to contribute to this country. And we're still fighting for it. But when you hear somebody say, be confrontational, people want to go run and say they want to be violent. And all we're saying is that we got to get past this mentality of people telling us you're asking for too much too soon here. Why do you want so much so soon? Take this and wait for this. Well, we can't do that anymore. We can't lose any more lives in the process. We have to be involved. One of the things I like about Brooklyn Center is that we got people out here that want to contribute to the success. They understand our plight, and they're asking, what can I do to help? And that's a community. And we're going to show you all that as a small community, we're going to set the example for this country here. What you see is what you're going to get. We're going to set the example for this country that how a city works together and how a city comes together in creating a direction that makes this country better here. So I just want you to look around and see, as you're here in our city, the good things that are going on, not just the boarded up stores and the things like that. You got people doing great things. And I'm going to continue to contribute, and I know the majority of people, if not everybody out here, is going to do that here. So that's all I have to say today, and I hope that you understand that we're making moves here that are going to be effective for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you all. This is going to summarize our press conference today, our speakers. And we are open for questions from the press. If she will, she's actually on her way out, so she has to be somewhere else.
Any others?
Any other question? No? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Does anybody need any spellings? Anybody want to listen to me? Hey. Do you want another interview? Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to go across the street. Okay. Yep. Sounds good. Nice that everything back by.
Okay.
They have it all.
Are we going to be right here?
Wherever you want. Go another. Yep.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It's good to see you too.
Yeah, I took her home.
Oh, okay.
But I have your purse.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for not forgetting us.
In the community, they're very sheltered. I'm hopeful that they won't actually end up being like socially isolated and unable to go back to the job. Next year,
The labor movement style.
Exactly. My mom was looking to it's been a little bit.
One more, okay.
You know,
Thank you. Right on this street.
Do you know who they're talking to over there? Yeah. Oh, the mayor?
You got in trouble with somebody's house. Every parent has the right to tell them. Yes! What's the difference?
I want to do the proper
Well, I'm still here. I'm with Channel 4 and I'll be here till noon. So I just want to let you know, I don't know the photographer's name, but I saw him drive away. Yep.
Are we having fun yet?
Thanks. Bye.
2 hours to stay here. My legs hurt. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Paint this in a good light, will you? Yeah, I would say, yeah. Probably the best ever.
No, it's okay. I can stand.
you could send
What's your name again? I recognize
Dusty.
Dusty, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot. Remember you from our station.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah. Good friends with Jamie and Sean and some of the people you know, so it's always good to see your face.
Yeah.
That was a powerful one, honestly. That was.
Yeah.